Welcome, agents, to another episode of Prime Tips. Today we're talking about tools of the trade, things that you can add to make your game better, your life easier, and really going to be talking more about generalities here, not really specific things, but things that I may have come across and others may have come across saying that these are things that you might want to have in your bag of tricks so that you can play better. And these things will differ depending upon where you're at and what tools that you use. So just some ideas. Of course, the first one is the phone. You got to have the phone. And you really got to look for what's the best cell reception for your area of play. So is that 5G? Is it 4G? Is it there's one provider that has a good signal in the area, another one that has bad signal in the area? You need to look at all those things before you really think about getting a phone, if you're thinking of getting a phone just for Ingress. But beyond that, there's a lot of things you can do to help that phone out. One of them is power banks or chargers of some sort. You want to look for something that has some high-speed charging capability. Sometimes they might have things like tablet and a phone jack on it. The tablet usually is going to charge quicker than the phone jack on it. USB type 1 and 2 typically only deliver about 500 milliamps or about 4.5 watts, whereas USB 3 typically delivers about 900 milliamps or 7.5 watts. So there's a lot of variables that are involved there. So typically a wired charging is going to be faster than wireless charging. You probably want to do a little testing and looking at a couple different ones, ask some people around which one works better for their particular phone, which might be like your phone. But you really want to look for something that's durable, that's going to be able to be out in the weather a little bit, take a couple drops, last you a couple years. Well, and if you're going to have one of those, then you're probably going to have to connect it via a cable. And you want a good, reliable cable. When you buy cheap cable, that's what you get, is a cheap cable. It's going to have some troubles. They're going to split. They're going to crack with age. So make sure that when you're looking at cables that you're getting good quality cables, especially ones that are fast charge cables. Now, how do you know that? Well, they might say that, but there are some apps for phones that you can actually see how much it is charging via that cable. So typically, if it's got a larger diameter cable, that means it's probably going to charge better. And you need to look at the contacts on that. So does it have gold contacts where it connects into the USB port, or is it zinc, or is it just some other metal? Do your homework. When you find a good cable, get a couple of them. Test them and make sure they work out. You may have to get some adapters for work for your phones, or better yet, adapters for other agents that you might be playing with so that they can use those cables as well. So you probably can look at cables even that have multiple ends on it. So if you're sharing operations with another agent and maybe you've got an iPhone and they have an Android, this type of cable would work better and more reliable casing and all that other stuff. The other thing that some people play with sound, some don't. But for an operation, a lot of time you're listening to something. So you want to be looking at headphones. And they could be headphones that just plug in. They could be wireless or Bluetooth headphones. I see a lot of players that use a Bluetooth headphone. So if you're dealing with an operation especially, you're probably going to be listening to somebody speaking. So you'll want to have that ability. The one thing about using a Bluetooth type headphone is look for those that are, of course, reliable, have long life, but can you use it with a single ear is also important, because there's going to be times that you want to hear the ambient sounds around you and also hear what's going on with your phone. So test it out. Make sure that you can do it with one ear, and is it comfortable for you? And it doesn't have to be a high dollar item. It could be something as simple as this one. which is I think like $10 at Walmart. And actually, I have a pair of these that I love. I use a lot. They fit in my ear well. The wire around them is a little bit of a pain, but they work well. So find one that works well and works well for you. May not be the most expensive one. Also, you may be thinking about these are Bluetooth headsets. Well, I've got Bluetooth in my car. That's true, but a lot of times if you're playing Ingress, you're going to get in and out of the car. And when you do that, then you're going to be disconnecting and reconnecting to the car, or you'll be outside of the car and still connected to the car, and the Bluetooth is pumping the sound inside the car and you can't hear it because you have the door closed. It just might be better just to have that Bluetooth headset that goes just to the phone. And speaking of phones, maybe you just need a backup phone that goes along with it. Because there's some times that you may not be able to get signal. One of the ways you can get around that is with a hotspot. So if you have certain areas in your area of play that one carrier just doesn't work, if you want to put out the money, you could always get a hotspot from that other carrier. And then when you get into that area, you could use that hotspot to get cell signal via Wi-Fi in that hotspot area. Or, if you really want to go all out, run another phone with that other carrier. And right now we're looking at the advent of 5G. You may not have a phone that supports 5G, or they're expensive. Maybe 5G is available. You could look at just having a hotspot that's 5G. Again, that's going to convert it down to Wi-Fi, and then you and or other agents around you could use that to get that 5G. One of the other things you might think about if you're moving around a lot is a runner's case. Those things you see runners that'll strap it onto their arm. There are some of them that are detachable phone runner cases, and that would be a nice idea. A lot of people say, well, why would you want a runner's case? Well, if you're doing a lot of walking, carrying that phone, you could be bumping it off. That might be a good place to put it. If you're in a car with other agents, you're hanging onto your phone all the time, especially if you're charging it. You can get just a regular runner's case like the one that you see here and a little extra Velcro strap, and you can actually strap that sucker to your leg so that as you're sitting in the car, you have something that holds your phone in its place. Want to go all out? You can go with a different type of case, the wristband holder. So you wear it more like a really big watch, and that you can rotate it. I know that looks really silly, but if you've ever been in an anomaly or in a situation where you're using that phone with a lot of touch quickly, your hands are going to get tired, especially if you're holding it with one and punching with the other. So something like a wrist band holder that allows you to put that phone on there and turn it around, that might come in handy. Now, if you're out with others, especially or out with yourself for long hours, just think about you're going to get hungry. Throw in some treats. Whether that be a bag of meat, candy bar, granola, whatever that it might be. Think about your environment when you do that. It may not be a good idea to put a bunch of chocolate bars in a car in the summertime. Kind of think that out. So you thinking about that, you're thinking about cargressing. And there's a few things with cargressing that might be tools that you might need that are specific to that. Probably the biggest one is power inside the vehicle, an inverter. Now, a lot of vehicles right now come out with inverters built in, 120 plugs, USB ports, all of that stuff built in. Some of your older vehicles may not have that. Even if your car has it, look into it, because it might only have a USB 1 charging rate instead of a USB 3 charging rate, or it just isn't in a place that works well for you. So that in-car inverter is a good thing. You want to look for multiple ports, USB ports, especially if you're going to be with other people. Look for those fast charging ports, a 120 plug-in, because somebody might bring a phone and they have a wall dongle that doesn't have a USB on the end or something like that, and you plug it right in. And make sure it's designed to work for your car. think about the setup of your car, how it's going to work. In my particular case, I have an older vehicle, but it works out really nice that I have a console between the seats in the front that has a cigarette plug inside that console. So I have an inverter, something like what you see there, and I can plug stuff in and it's out of the way. While you're thinking about cars, some of the other things is, how is it going to hold on to your phone? And can you use that to your advantage? I have one of these in my vehicle. It's just a regular, it looks like a regular car holder that you put the phone in and it snaps in. But this particular one also offers wireless charging, which is really nice because every time that I put it into that holder or that cradle, it's charging. Now, it may not be charging as fast as a wired charging, and there might be some other issues, being as if it's up on the dash, it might get a little warmer, things like that. But the nice thing is, if I put it in there and I'm rolling down the road, I could have a fully charged phone when I get out to do some cargressing or ingressing on the run, so to say. The other thing about the wireless is it's more universal. So, if I have an Android phone and somebody else has an iPhone, we don't have to worry about what cables we have or anything like that. If we both have wireless charging, it's snapping into one of those and it's charging. And also, it's going to be less wear and tear on your phone because over time, plugging and unplugging any jack onto any phone is just going to wear down the contacts and wear down that connection. So putting it into a wireless charger like that is just not going to give that kind of wear. So you might have to think about other things like reducing the load that the phone's doing, making sure it's air conditioned and getting a lot of cool air on the back of the phone while it's there so that it doesn't overheat and start to throttle the CPU and things like that. But I myself have really good luck with that type of charger. Speaking of chargers, if you're in a phone or in a car, your phone's not the only thing that needs to have a charge. Car does too. So think about those things, the road kit that you would typically have with any kind of car. A battery charger, a booster pack, the spare tire, road kit, all of those things. Because typically if you're cargressing, you're going to be out for hours upon end, and you may be driving in areas that you're not familiar with. So want to be ready for that. So speaking of being ready, you probably, at least in the United States, we're moving towards colder times of the year. So might be getting into a little wintergressing. And playing outdoors in the wintertime and playing Ingress is a bit of a challenge, and there's a few things that you can do to make that challenge a little bit better. Probably one of the biggest things is touch gloves. Now, touch gloves aren't really created equal because you're looking at putting a glove on your hand and then still being able to make contact with your phone and give it commands. So consider the fine motor skills and movements that you would need for that touch glove to work. So there are those touch gloves that just have a touch capacitance type thing on the end of a finger, which is nice because your hands are always inside them, but typically those are stiff and they're hard to be very fine movements with those type of gloves. They're great for, turning things on, turning things off, maybe dialing a number. But if you're rotating or you're zooming or you're hitting, say, a portal on a map, they just aren't precise enough. So you might look at a glove that allows you to pull the actual tip of your finger and your thumb out, and so that you can use it that way. I know sometimes I just take one glove off and, you suffer with it. But you also need, good socks, good shoes, keep your feet warm. And back to the hands, you might want to think about hand warmers, not only for your hands, but also for your phone. A number of phones, if they get too cold, especially if your hand is cold, they just don't respond really well. So you can look at different types of hand warming systems, the disposable type systems. The nice, it's nice for a quick thing. May not last quite as long, but you don't have to worry about charging it or fueling it or anything like that. It's there, it's ready to go. The electronic ones, again, you're probably charging things like your phone anyway. So the electronic hand warmers are nice, but they may not last as long. So you may want to just, depending upon where you're at and how cold it is and how long you're outside, you might have to go old school with a catalytic hand warmer. The old Zippo hand warmers that you put in the lighter fluid, and it actually, is like burning in your pocket. But, those can go for 12 hours. So those are things that you want to consider keeping your hands warm. Summergressing is a little bit easier. You typically don't have the issues with your phone as much. Maybe your phone does overheat a little bit, but it's you that's probably going to overheat. So, water bottle, you might think about a raincoat, an umbrella. Typically phones don't respond well when they get wet. Sunglasses and sunblock for you. Insect repellent, again, depending upon where you're going. You might even think about long pants in the summertime. It does seems weird, but sometimes you may be going through a little bit of brush to get to that one portal. So it's good to kind of have that alongside. The problem in summer is seeing your phone itself. So something to shade the phone so that you can see what's going on. Then you have other things that are probably a little more specialized, like a cell booster. You get into those remote portals that have very poor signal or could be, a different carrier. You might have to have some specialized equipment just to get a signal. That's usually something that is well kept secret. If one side knows that portal A, you use this equipment and you can get signal, they probably keep that to themselves. So that's just some of the things you can think about that you can add to your tools of the trade to make your life playing Ingress, whether it be in an operation, cargressing, wintergressing, or summergressing. There are others that are more specialized. We didn't talk about things like bike gressing or urban gressing. Things like, do you have a bike repair kit? Do you have extra bus tokens? Those type of things. But these are things that you can start with. And who knows, maybe I'll see